Well, hi everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube art tutorial channel. I'm a professional artist working from my studio in Essex in the UK and painting plein air in the countryside. Well, here we go then. I'm using my large Sable-esque mop brush by Pro Art. I've thoroughly wetted the brush and put on some Winsor & Newton artist quality Winsor & Newton artist quality, which are all my, or professional quality, which all of my colours are. This is the Winsor & Newton equivalent to Prussian blue. It's the Windsor blue, and I use that because I feel that sort of gives it that extra punch. You can use Prussian. Now I've cleaned the brush and removed most of that anyway, as much as I can, and I'm working down and I'm adding in a little of the warmer tone, which is the alizarin crimson, and just I'm not spreading that on the paper, or it's blending itself basically, and it's nice and damp as I work down. As I go down, I'm going to add a little more of that, particularly in the lower regions there. I have to move a bit quick because I know what I want to do here, and that needs to happen fairly quick. Then I'm going to add cadmium lemon to that, because I want to start the effect of a lovely light that's just glowing, a bit more yellow there. There you go. That's what I'm looking for, that lovely yellowy green light that that you get at this time of year. This is a summer scene, so got to be aware that we get the light as good as we can. And while we have that, I'm going to drop in now some of this colour. It's damp at the bottom, so that remains damp. So this is the very light areas of what I'd class as the leafing, the summer leafing that we can see, that's just showing, just covering, if you like, the area where, nice touch there, just begin to dry, so that's okay. I'm not too concerned with that at this stage, and that then spreads across like that. There we go. Yeah, that's looking quite good. Okay, now we can deal with the lower area, which there again I'm putting in very, very light yellow green that we can see, and I'm just going to touch this in right there, because I'm looking for that nice sparkle that I can see right at the end of the road. So laying in Gallywood, and always happy to paint these sorts of subjects because they're quite interesting to paint. Okay, right, clean the brush again. Now I'm going to use cobalt blue now, and I'm going to pop that into there, a little strong, but Let's just blend that in and allow that to create an illusion of depth right into that area. That's what I'm looking for, that feeling of depth within a summer wood feel. There you go. I'm just going to lift off just a little bit of colour there, just to soften it. There you go. Don't want to get too technical with this. So what I'm going to do to stop me doing that, I'm going to add some bluer feel to the tone and to the colour, and just pull that down there like that. This is the slightly bluer greens that we can see, slightly darker greens that will begin to come through shortly. And this is cadmium yellow and cobalt blue. See the way I'm just gently feeding those through. A little bit more here. Don't want to cover too much of that up. Yep. And what I want to do, just before it dries, I want to create the ultimate depth. And that is in that area there, where it's nice and light. There we are. See where it's just sparkling now? That's what I like. That seems to be working particularly well, which is a bonus at this stage. Right, cadmium yellow, cobalt blue. Nice mix, nice colours to use for these sort of areas of leafing. Don't want to get too bogged down with detail, but going in a little darker just in places at the top there, as you can see. Well, it's a bit of a job for you to see, but as that comes into picture, I'm not going to change the camera now, you will be able to see what I'm doing up the top there. There we go. Let's just move that camera around just a touch. Perhaps you can then see that better. And gradually dropping in. Don't want to cover up all of the areas of colour in the sky. And there's nice loads of branches here. But it's beginning to dry now, so we can use the dry to create the outside edges of some of those leaf areas, particularly over here, because this tree is nearer to us, so that's where we need to see the more local branches, if you like. And yeah, there we go. And leaf areas. And of course, as we go into the distance, any overhanging leafing will become considerably smaller, or appear considerably smaller. And that's what I like about these brushes. You do get that chance to paint these sort of details, I suppose you could call them details, but don't like to call them details. I don't like the word detail in a painting. I prefer to call it sort of texture or whatever. Okay, so that's that. Good. So that seems to be working quite well. Now, while I have this, I'm just going to hint at a central area of greenery in the centre there, that it's just where the cars haven't sort of removed any of the grasses that grow up in between. There's a single track, you see, And I'm also going to paint in a sense of a little bit of a bank here that's formed. Cow parsley is something that is what the customer is looking at, so that will be something that I'm always aware of as I paint, to get that right. That's a jagged edge there. Okay, so we've got the lane. Now I'm going to move to a smaller brush, still a mop, as you can see, and I'm going to start to paint in one or two areas that are generally a little darker. Now that's drying nicely in the back, so that's not a problem. So I'm going to use cobalt blue with raw sienna in this instance, because I want that green to have a bit of a punch to it, and it's a very dull blue green. That's what I've got right at this point here, where there's a little bit of overhanging area there. Can improve on that, but at this stage I think that's dark enough. And the start of a bit of cow parsley, which I know, as I say, the customer is very keen to put in, or for me to put in. That's the general way things are. And now I'm going to just hint at some blue, very blue areas, and cow parsley standing up. Now these trees are going to be darker, so we're not too concerned with that. That's it. Now what I've got to do, I've got to preserve certain areas and drag up. Yeah. And the same here. Drag those up. They'll gradually blend in to what we're looking for. Right. Now to that I'm going to add Windsor blue with a little cadmium. Not too much at this stage, and that tree is going to be darker than the background. And just trying to get a feeling. I was aware of this cow parsley business, which I would say makes life very interesting. Well, that's my technical term for a bit more difficult, if you see what I mean. But there you go. That's what we do as artists. We need to paint all manner of things, really. Use my finger for that. That's a technique that I do quite often now, which a bit more yellow in there now, and a bit more blue, not too much, because this has just a little bit of see, we're looking to try and depict an area of darker wood there. And what I do to one side, I'm going to do to the other, that all helps the continuity of the scene. Right, now I can get more, well, not wild, but a bit more sort of interesting with the brush strokes now. And just going to add more water and then blend that now, because I want that to hold and blend with the lower area. Now that seems to work quite well. And we will have some yellows in that, little yellow patches where the light meets the dark of the foliage before we come down to the cow parsley that lays nicely there. Let's go all dark with that, because it would be dark. Just stand that up, there you go. Look at that. Quite amazing what you can do with watercolour, isn't it? You know, it's not a, you know, it often frightens a lot of people, but in reality it's not as difficult as it really looks. Right, more blue. Now I'm adding burnt sienna to that, blue and yellow, because we've got to show certain areas of shading, certain areas of light. There, texture to go in later, so we're not too concerned that it looks a little on the sort of, it's blowing really. I think that's what I'd sort of call it. It's blowing out, you know, it's not got that sort of look yet. We'll have, trust me on this one. More of those three colours again to try and get some nice dark areas there. We've got that tree coming down there. And what have we got this side? Ah, yes. Right, now this is where they've got that ivy. There is an ivy clad tree there. So I'm going to try and show that. And we have this sort of area here like that. And then we're coming through to a lighter area that somehow got sunlight on it. Not quite sure how, but it does seem to work. So we've got a nice bit of dark area there as we come into the light. There we go. And I'm going to produce a little bit of this dark touch this side too, because that all helps to indicate grasses and undergrowth that stands up there. And I'm just going to remove some paint from the brush and try and get a sense now of light that's sort of dappling through there. And then of course we then come to show where the start of this cow parsley is actually standing up there and here. That's why I've gone a little darker, because that's also a very important part of this scene. Now as I work forward, I'm creating larger brush marks, because the cow parsley actually stands down turn my heater off because it's warm enough in here. And so what we need is the feeling of this cow parsley, like that. Small little marks in the distance, like that. Larger as we come forward. And they sort of swathe across, they go across and then down and head towards. And what you've got to remember here, on painting the negative, the positive shapes are the shapes that are left, which is the white paper. And the size of the darker marks that side have got to be the same size this side, otherwise it doesn't look right. Now, I've not used masking fluid, could so easily have used masking fluid for this, and I would say if you feel a little bit uneasy about this sort of process, masking fluid would be successful, but as it stands with me at the moment, I'd sooner try and just create the white paper, or leave the white paper on its own, really, rather than yeah, I think that could work as cow parsley very shortly. Now what I've got to do is create a feeling, let's just see what it's like there we go, of the greenery that's standing up. So the cow parsley lays down, or sorry, it stands on the top, and then we have this greenery that runs, let's pull that around there we go, and it stands down and into that to a certain extent, not just layers, got to have a little bit of this, and it sort of stands up really. And as it comes further forward, I'm adding a little bit more yellow, and the brush strokes have got to be more vertical, because you know, we've got to show that we've got a bit of depth there. Stands up, you see. Like that. And a bit more here now. Just watch we don't get overexcited, because that's something that can happen, and happens to me quite often actually when I'm painting this sort of thing. Tend to get the feeling that everything's going according to plan, and then before you know it, it all goes pear-shaped, because you've got too excited about a particular area, and it's just not don't seem to be working anymore, which can be rather unhelpful. And as you know, with watercolour, once you overpaint an area, then you lose it more or less forever in that fresh sort of tone. Good. Now along the edge, just before it dries, I'm going to add a little burnt sienna to that, and just spread that there, and just spread that there. We've got shadow to come in, so we're not too worried at this stage, but it's nice to have a little bit of warmth along that edge. See that, where that burnt sienna is making that green look greener? Reds, browns always makes greens look so much more greener, if that's a technical term, greener. and of course that stands up too. So let's just make certain that we do our best in that respect, and that comes out of picture that way. There you go. Perfect. Now while that's drying, I'm going to put in the road. Now I'm not putting the shadow in, I'm putting in the road itself. Starting off with cobalt blue, a little bit grey green to start, and it does need to be, leave some white paper too. There we go. Now it is blue, but I'm going to give it a little bit of warmth, and that warmth will be light red. Not sure why at this stage, just like light red in tracks. And as we come forward, we add more light red. And I'm just running over that just a little bit, over those greens and up the bank a bit, just to amalgamate it all together. There we are, nice bit of warmth. Now I'm adding a little alizarin crimson to that. Remember we've got it in the sky, so let's bring it down into the road as well. There we go. And that enhances all those greens. It pulls everything together. A little bit stronger. That's too strong, but let's go with it. There we are. Because I want that to have a lovely glow in that foreground there. There we go. That's the way you start your painting of this lovely scene. It's actually on Galleywood Common. Now, so that is all drying off very, very nicely. We've got the cow parsley running either side. Bit to do to that, shadow work to go in, leafing to come over. But I want to attend to, there's an ivy covered trunk here, and there's ivy sort of hanging around the trunk, side of the trunk. And to achieve that, I'm using quite a dry mix of burnt sienna and Windsor and Prussian blue, or Windsor or Prussian blue. And that, and you see the way I'm leaving white paper, because to me it gives that feeling of sort of light catching the tops of these ivy leaf areas. Just watching where it goes. Oh, it goes up that side, and that is an up-to-date version of this ivy. So what I'm showing you here is exactly as it is, or was, a few weeks back. So that's makes it quite authentic. Okay, and then we have the branch supporting the ivy there. And do we have ivy anywhere else? Well, we can always put a little bit on that little branch there, just running up there, just to, you know, it's growing all the time, so let's say it's grown a little bit more. So that is about right, I think. Shadow to go in, obviously. So that works quite well. Okay, so that's that. Now, I've changed to another mix, cobalt blue and cadmium yellow, And this is where I'm putting in, and I want to remove some of the moisture. It is quite dark, but it's not too dark, and it's a blue sort of a green with overhanging leafing. This leaf work is the leaf work that is in the distance, overhanging the track or the lane. Sorry. Right, so that's that. All right, there you go. So that gives an impression of that. I'm also going to have a similar area just coming in here. Now you notice I'm over painting the trunks or branches purely because they are darker, so they'll paint in later on. That's okay. That's the distant sort of trees that are creating branches that are jiggling and jangling about around the bottom there. See the way we've created that lovely bit of glow at the end of the track, and that's what I wanted to do. Right, now we can go for something a little bit more solid, and this is more or less the background branch work, leafing. It's not really dark, it's the background leafing. We leave some of the leafing unpainted because that's the thing that gives us the light and the medium tones. The dark will come in later, and if we go too dark too early, then obviously it's not exactly what we're looking for. Now we add a little bit more cadmium yellow because I want to retain a rich green. So cadmium yellow's got going in, and this could possibly be cadmium yellow from that tree that stands there, and of course there's, or the leaf, sorry, from that tree that stands there. And now we just dot and dab, leave some gaps. I like to give a feeling that we do have some gaps in that branch work, and a little bit more cadmium yellow again. Branches, try and vary the branches if you can. Not always possible. There we are. Yeah. So far it's pretty much as I would have required really when I started this painting. But let's not get too excited. It can go downhill very, very quickly when you're painting this sort of subject. It's really isn't an exact science, and generally watercolour isn't, but that's the fun of it. That's what makes it so exciting, that sometimes it doesn't quite work. Frustrating, but it does then give you the opportunity to create another piece of artwork with anything that you've learned. You can use. Just a little bit of that nice green there. Yeah. I can see through this. I can see through this one. And this tree is much closer too, still quite open. Don't want to cover up all, I mean, there is an awful lot of greenery and branch work going over those branches, so you know we do need plenty of this lovely sort of summer colour, but having said that, let's not get too carried away at this stage, because there will be some from that tree there overhanging into that. That's good. Yep. Then as you come forward, a bit more bolder brush strokes again, because that's what we're looking for. It's quite dense in this area. See the way I'm creating more of a dense feel now as that comes down, because this will effectively be behind that tree. There we are. And I think that gives that lovely feel of perspective running towards, you know, it's all heading towards that distant, the lane in the you know, the following the uphill, and the lane goes slightly round to the left. Just before I finish, I'm just going to put in a little bit of this warmth, or nice yellow tone there. I don't want that to attract the eye, which it is doing, and so I'm just going to give it a little bit of brown and a little bit of blue just to make it a little uninteresting, if that's I think that's what we're looking for. But it does, we've got shadow to come in there, and it shows the tops of this cow parsley, which is, just soften that a little there we go, which is what we're looking to do. So that's that. We're going to put in the trunk work now to support the leaf we've painted, then the final areas of dark leafing. Right, so I've put that trunk work in. Now I'm going to paint in this one, which is larger and slightly warmer in tone or colour. So we need a bit of, there we go, yeah, gives a nice feel of sort of like a trunk area in the summer, and it just finishes on top of what will be an area of foliage standing up. And let's load that again, a little more water, and that's quite, there again, quite a substantial tree. So let's give it a bit of meat to these trunks. And then of course where the trunks meet, or the trunk areas meet any of the branches or the leaf shapes, then we just leave gaps. And that then, I'm going to take that right out to there. There we go. Because then we get justification for it being such a large trunk. And when I've said that, I've made it slightly larger, because that's what I wanted. And have we got any more? Yeah, let's take a branch from there, and there's another branch there. Well, there isn't, but I'm putting them in because I just feel that we need to give this one just that little bit more substance. There we are. See the way I'm picking the branches out from the gaps and within the greenery, and I'm just adding a touch more blue and a little more water now, because there is another tree that stands further back, and notice if I put more blue and more water to that tree stands back slightly from that because the colour isn't quite as powerful. And that's the illusion when you paint watercolour. You know, you create a feeling of depth with the use of colour, and of course where it sits on the ground too. Do we have a branch? Do we have a branch? Yes, we do have a branch. Branch comes out like that and heads off. Another one there. Good. So that's created a lovely cluster of trees. Now I've uprated yet again the colour. I'm using burnt sienna now with cobalt blue to try and get an even sort of more dense, even more richer colour. And this I'm going to finish. It's nearer than those, but I want it to finish in that part of the wood area on the bank, because it does sit back, and I think we would see quite a bit of that. And now I'm pulling that up. I'm using the bigger rigger for this, purely because covering a bigger area, just making sure that we get that right, and that sort of sits there like that. That's nice. And are we going to see quite a bit of that trunk? I suggest we will. So I'm going to put that in there like that. About that sort of width. Make it too straight. I like to see really straight trunks. That's not the way they normally grow. And then we've got a branch that comes at an angle, just slides off up there, and then it obviously overlays that because that stands in front. That's the reason for that. Oh, and then we will see another part of the trunk just showing there, and in actual fact I'm going to make that wider there and wider here, because I want that to show quite a large tree. Don't want to be too small. And then we have a gap, and then we go again, and then we have another area there where the trunk heads off up into the canopy of the wood. So that's pretty much as I would have expected. And then of course a branch that comes out there in amongst any greenery that we can see. Another branch there, we'll take another one there. Always aware of what the tree looks like in its in the photograph or as it is today, but you also got to be aware that you're creating an illusion of a particular wood that is just having to think about this, because it's got a little bit sort of narrow and then wide again, so I'm widening up again. There we go. And we have quite a large area there of branches, and we have some small twiggy branches that head off, and in actual fact there's another one there that heads off. There we go, and that goes up into the canopy and disappears. So that's the foreground tree on the right. The thing is with summer woodland scenes, you know, it's an awful lot of leafing, so there's a lot of shadow work. So you don't see a lot of the light, but I want light coming through. And we have, now I'm going to produce the tree on the left, and we will see a bit of the trunk in places on that. Just dotted around, not too much. It's quite a substantial tree, this one, and in that case I need to show that too. Okay, yeah, that's okay. And then I finally head off up to the lower part of the trunk. This mix is a little stronger. It's burnt umber, Windsor blue. There we go. See how nice and rich brown that is. Really pulls that forward, and the others slowly sit back. Right, I'm going to leave a gap here to show a little bit of that leafing overhanging the trunk, just to show you the sort of technique required there. And I've got to be careful. I want that to go up there. There's going to be some more leafing there, I think. Well, that's my plan anyway. And the trunk goes, all right, yeah, gotcha. That's all right. Talk amongst yourselves for a moment. It's just that I'm trying to work out where this branch goes, and that then comes down there like that. That's better. That's it. And then we head off up into the canopy. Again, we'll leave a gap, and that then shoots off up like that. It will gradually show up nicely once we get some darker branch work on. And then we have another branch as such that shoots like that and heads off up as well. By leaving gaps, we then create leaf overhanging the trunk. It makes sense, doesn't it? It's not sort of rocket science until, but of course you don't realise this until you've actually been shown, I suppose. Well, I didn't anyway until I studied other artists' techniques, realised that, so that's how they do it, do they? That's how they give that impression. Go, yep, that's okay. And then that then goes up there like that, branch overhanging, yep, and then that runs up there like that with a branch coming off of that. There we go, that's okay. Another one here. And slowly the brush is running out of paint, so the actual mix is getting weaker, which is just what you need when you paint more foreground branches. That's gone a bit heavy, but I'll lose that in there. And just a little bit more. This is why I love using these mop brushes as much as possible, because they do hold a lot of paint, so you can paint a long way, paint a lot of colour. I don't know whether you can see that. I'm trying to do this so you can see anyway. I'm going to have to forsake the video, I'm afraid, for the fact that I need to get the look of it right. As I say, this is a commission, so it's not all about the video. It's got to be correct for the client. I'm hoping that that more or less does it. Now, just before we look at the final shadow work, I want to bring in some real dark leaf work. Not everywhere, not in too many places, but it's nice in the corners there, and it's sort of very much underneath the leafing sections. You know, you've got to remember we've got a backlight here, so the this is the real strong this dark colour will help to give that sense that there is a backlight and sunlight coming in from the back. And this is Windsor blue and cadmium yellow. At this stage, this is the colour. Just got to be a bit careful, but overall, don't think we can do much more than that for this particular colour. Needs to be fairly dense up there. Let's just go a little bit stronger up the top there. That's good. But of course we do have light coming through. So we've always got to be aware of that. Whoops, that's a blob. What I'd class as a blob. We don't want blobs. You don't need blobs. We've got to be aware also we don't overdo this these dark colours for the branches. Although having said that, it does give light, it does give a sense of light. See the way that light hits and comes through the painting. So unless you go dark enough, can never appreciate the light, and that is the common fault when you've got you know, when you're learning. But I'm going to add a little red to that because I want it to be even darker. I think in this lower area, that's where all the light is coming from. Yes. Okay, and it's nice and dark there. And as we go into the distance, we've got to be aware that these dark touches get smaller, a bit more delicate. That gives us a sense of perspective that you wouldn't get if you were too weak with the dark tone and too strong with the brush strokes, you know, too solid. And that red I think works quite well. And now I'm going to use just a little bit of license because the trees don't actually hang like this. But I've decided that in this distance, some dark overhanging branches like that. So it's red, which is alizarin crimson, and blue, which is the Winsor & Newton. Artist's quality, Winsor blue. And then even right in the distance here, I wonder whether this would work for these trees here. Probably does actually. Gives a nice feeling of dark. Yeah, I like that. Really does give that. Don't want to get too fussy. That's something that can happen if you're so, you know, if things are going well, just be careful, because it can all go a little pear-shaped if you overdo that. Right. Yeah, while we have this, I'm going to put in a little bit of this here too, on the overhang there. Just got to soften that just with the finger. Yeah, a little bit on the strong side. So there you go. That's a sign that I'm getting a little bit worked up and I'm creating too much light that isn't really there. That's all right. Yep, that's okay. And then of course we've got a little bit of that along that edge and where those trees sit too, and on top there where the cow parsley begins to form. Yeah. And then a little bit there. Obviously we do have shadow to come in, which is always an area that is worth thinking about. Right, before I do anything here, I want to do some more of this sort of textured leafing for this tree that overhangs here, and that is quite dark initially. Just see whether keep the outer edges just in case it doesn't seem to be working, but I think that it is. A bit more water, a bit more red, a bit more blue. Don't want it to be too dark. Don't want it to completely dominate too much at this stage. That's it. Right, a bit more blue, a bit more red, and I'm putting just a bit of yellow in there too, the cadmium, because that'll take off that real solid sort of feel, which I don't really want. And we begin to see here a bit more of, you know, a bit more shape, in as much as this is a bit more of the more bold brush strokes. Here we are. Yep, that's pretty much as I would have suggested would work. Just a little bit solid there. To think about this one. That's why I've gone quiet. I always tell when I go quiet because chances are things are not quite working out. Oh, there you go. Recovery time, and that seems to be recovered quite nicely. And now we can go down, creating lights and darks, and also on this outer edge some really dark stuff, which is heading in towards that area there. There we are. And here we go. We just carry on. Too much on the brush for this. Don't want to go too solid, but we want some more bold sort of brush work here. There we go. Yep. You've got to balance your trees to suit not only what you see, but also what you've brush marks you've made previously. So it's quite often the case that branches form and change shape because of what you've done. You know, you put something else on and all of a sudden you think, ah, well, I've got to justify that with some other branch work. There is some touches there that all very, very finely suggested. This is what you're doing. You're suggesting. You're not actually painting every single leaf. You're suggesting that there are branches overhanging, and that's the illusion that we try and create as we paint. And as I say, it's an illusion really of branches. Good. Now that's almost there. What I want to do is create a bit of texture now, and a little bit here for some darker stuff standing up like that. An illusion there of some darker stuff standing up and hanging around like that. Little bit of warmth there. Don't want to remove too much of the colour that's created by the warmth of other colours. There we are, nice bit of, I like that little bit of mistiness there. I think we can get away with that, but we'll see when we come to shadow. And getting away with things is quite something that you learn to do at some point, or you can learn as you paint, because some things are possible and some things aren't. And just trying to remove a little bit of the cow parsley there, and I'm also liking that little bit there, but I'm also thinking perhaps we need something to just to give that mistiness justification there, like that. And then of course we come dark again Remember I put that light wash in, so I'm now creating a textured feel for that and using the point of the brush to create the look of those heads to the cow parsley. We're not far off of the shadow work. Now I'm using quite a cool blue. It's Windsor blue with just a touch of alizarin and a yellow, because at this stage what I want is a soft film of shadow. I don't want that to be too green. Right, let's clean the brush again. That just shows you that you can get it wrong. Right, a bit more blue, a bit more Windsor blue, and let's go again, because there will be a nice shadow. There we go. I think that does it. That runs across the track, up that centre, across the track, and up that side there. There we go. And what I'm going to do, this is a dappled light, so I need let's just use that rigger just to soften while that paint is still damp, the area there and the area there, so that we get soft and hard edges. And I'm going to use this technique quite a lot as I paint forward, adding a little bit of red to this now just to give it a bit more warmth. And we have coming down there like that, across there like that, and up that side. We'll pick up the track shape again shortly, so don't be too concerned that the shape of the track has disappeared a little bit just around that corner, because at this stage I'm not too concerned with that. Lovely mottled sort of effect that you get from lights that's dappled across the lane, softening some areas, darkening others. Right, a bit more red. Yep, not too much at this stage. Leave plenty of white areas just where it's dappled. The light is dappling. A bit more solid in places, particularly where these trees create light. You know, that's areas that need to be a little darker. But other than that, there we are. A bit more red. I say a bit more red. It doesn't show up a great deal of red, but we don't want it to. It really is a delicate process. There we are. You know, a bit more. Notice how I'm getting more bold with the brush strokes as I'm painting across and down. And that stands up, but then across. Now a bit more red, and I'm adding just a little more blue with it, but not a great deal, because I want this foreground shadow to be quite strong. See the way we've got that purpley mix to it. Leaving enough light to show. bit more water, bit more red, bit more blue, and see the way I'm sweeping the brush quickly across this foreground area, because that is the way I see light on this sort of day when I'm walking around the common. And it's always nice to keep that clear in your mind, really, so that when you come to paint you think, oh yeah, that's the light I'm looking to pick up. That dappled sort of light. There we go. Now this is where you've got to be very careful. You don't overplay the whole thing. Best to allow that to dry. There we go. And yeah, just a little bit of dry brush work just in places there, and that bank stands up. Use that as the that just helps to tell you that the bank stands up and goes around the corner. Remember I said that you'd lost a bit of that there? Well, I'll put it back in now. There we go. Good. So we need to really allow that to dry. Now while that is drying, I'm just going to put a little bit shadow in this ivy area, because we do need to show that we've got some darks and some lights within that ivy shape, and also running up the underside of some of these branches that are very, very close to us, so we can see a bit of light and a bit of dark in amongst them. There we are. Nice. That seems to be working quite well, and we're going to do the same this side. A little darker area there, a little bit on the underside there. That can then head off up like that. Just lose that as it goes up into the canopy of the wood. Okay, and I'm going to chance my arm here. Let me just pull back so you can see what I'm doing. Well, that's the finishing touches put into another commission, and so it's another successful painting as far as I'm concerned, and only hope the customer feels the same.